Welcome to the Inclusion Journey podcast, where we have candid conversation about compelling concepts in education. Join this unforgettable inclusion journey as we explore together the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am Nupur Sethi, the creator and the host of this podcast, former teacher, a fellow advocate for inclusive classroom and an inclusive society. We have kicked off this podcast series talking about an inclusive practice called co-teaching, where two teachers come together to co-plan, co-teach, and co-assess. In the last two episodes, you have heard from administrator implementing this practice at a middle school site and at a high school site. I am so excited to bring to you today two teachers who have been implementing co-teaching, Lori and TK. Lori has been teaching since 1988. And she has been co-teaching for the last 11 years. TK has been teaching for 10 years and including 8 years of co-teaching. Let's dive in together into the journey of implementing co-teaching with Lori and TK. Welcome, Lori and TK.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So, Lori, do you want to tell us what is co-teaching, according to you?
Co-teaching to me is a gen ed teacher and a special ed teacher together. One is the content expert, one is the access expert, and we teach a class together with students that need co-teaching together. I'm rambling now. So this is when TK says I talk too much. So what we do is we bring two different sides of specialty to students so that more students can have access to the gen ed curriculum, on-level gen ed curriculum.
Mm-hmm. And TK, I know I have seen you both in action. Can you create a picture of what it looks like when you both are co-teaching?
I think it depends on the class, because some classes organize chaos, and some classes are quiet, and we have to pull it out of the kids. We kind of feed off each other. I start the day with like question of the day. Then Lori comes in. Well, I might give directions, and then Lori will come in and maybe do like a 10-minute guided notes, and then we hit the ground running. And so we're both kind of team teaching back and forth. That's usually how it goes. It's not one person dominating and one person sitting on the sideline.
Mm-hmm. And you both have been teaching at Gunn High School in Palo Alto Unified School District together.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. What was your, like when first, TK, like you were asked to co-teach, what, you were very skeptical about it, or?
No. When I first started, it was a middle school in Texas, and then I enjoyed it. It was science, 7th and 8th grade, and then I went to Mesquite, Texas, and I was put in what's called an inclusion. So for 2 years, I would be in and out of classrooms for every 20 minutes, but I felt like it was a waste of, special ed teachers' talents, because we're in there for maybe 20 minutes. We don't really know the content. The kids need help, and we don't know how to help them because we actually can't understand the content because we go in for 20 minutes. And sometimes those 20 minutes were tests. And so we would, but I enjoy co-teaching because I enjoy being in the classroom and enjoy getting to knowing the students. So I wasn't skeptical. I was actually pushing for co-teaching in my old school. And so when I was interviewing, they said we would be co-teaching, which kind of drew me to Gunn.
And Lori, since you have long experience in teaching, and were you ready to go into co-teaching? Like when they first said, when we say that teachers who have taught for a very long time, it's hard, like something new, right, to jump into. Like, what was your first reaction? I said, let's go into co-teaching.
Well, 12 years ago was my first year as a teacher leader, the department lead. And I had an opportunity to go to an inclusion workshop in the summer, and I wasn't going to be co-teaching that next year. But at the end of that seminar, I think it was a 2-day seminar, I was like, well, why haven't we been doing this forever? Because this makes so much more sense. And so when the opportunity came to have a class that was co-taught, I volunteered. That was easy for me. The class that we teach in science is conceptual physics. We also have a co-taught biology class, but that's not my place. And so, yeah, so I started that 11 years ago with Courtney Carlamagno, and I taught with her for 8 years. And then TK came in, and actually that was probably, in terms of a transition between one person and another, I could not have imagined a better transition, which was really awesome, especially after being with someone for 8 years that, I called my work wife, because we really, we argued like a couple, and we did all kinds of things like a couple, but that's how you keep the relationship going, I think.
Yeah.
The universal design for learning and co-teaching, is that the best combination together? Or like, did you do universal design for learning, added it later on top of co-teaching, or was it always thinking about multiple ways of representation for the students and using that as during your planning time? Like, are we doing?
I think it's embedded. There's some times where we're like, oh man, we need to get our universal design checklist out and make sure we're hitting some of these, how kids learn, make sure we're hitting everybody's, because some are kinesthetic and some are auditory and some are visual. So making sure that we do have some of those elements in our instruction. So we have to, what's the word I'm looking for?
You have to be purposeful.
We have to be purposeful in our
It doesn't come naturally to us. It's not something that I was taught in 1988 when it came to, or 86 to 88, when it came to learning how to teach. And so many of the things we already had been doing when we started doing more training, specifically looking at how to incorporate UDL, we do a lot of those things, we just never
Knew those were the words. Those
right,
were the
and we
technical-
weren't very purposeful, and so we have been trying to be more purposeful about it, especially in the last couple of years.
And as a special ed teachers, the Access are one of those options, right? You have that strength of bringing from a special ed lens.
Yeah, because we're not strong in the content, as strong as our co-teacher is in the content. And so having a different lens sometimes helps and be like, well, what if we do it this way? What if we try something like this? And so Lori's been great because she's willing to try those things. There's not really a lot of pushback. So I think with co-teaching, you definitely have to have a good relationship. And if that relationship isn't good, it can not be great
Yeah.
for the classroom.
Yeah, just like, yeah. So since you have taught before in a non-co-teaching setting and then co-teaching, what was the benefits do you immediately saw in your students?
What I saw immediately was that it wasn't just the students that were targeted for having a co-taught class that benefited from having the two teachers in the class. So I had an instructional aide in the class before that, but not a co-teacher. With a co-teacher, the students are able to find at least one person who they really, really trust, and we try to make it be both of us, but some days one of us is grumpy, and so it doesn't always work out that it can be both of us, but we let the students know who's the right person to target that day. I also think that them seeing us interact with each other, it sometimes feels like a dog and pony show, and they enjoy that, and I think they enjoy being in the classroom because they feel safe having a place where two people are there to help them. They know they can raise their hand and get a question answered sooner than if they had to wait for a single teacher to come around for them. It helps keep them more engaged too when they know they can get their questions answered sooner.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was the relationship with the students, because I've been in the non-co-teach setting and it's kind of that awkward, you come into the room, everyone's looking at you.
Yes.
And you try not to, it kind of pulls the student into the limelight of like, oh, well, they get help when they come in.
Yeah.
So it kind of points the student out, which this, when we co-teach, it's everybody in the classroom gets the same amount of help. And so I think the relationship with the student, Lori said, you know, some feel more comfortable with Lori and some feel more comfortable with me, and you don't take it personal. There's, you know, we had an incident, one kid, he was such a high level kid in conceptual physics. He probably should have been in physics. And they'll ask me questions and I'll be like, ooh, you're gonna have to ask Ms. Pennington on that. And they're like, Coach Annie, you know, sometimes I wonder how much you know about physics. And I said, you know what? Sometimes I think that for myself. So it's like, yeah, you're gonna have to ask Ms. Pennington on those high level questions, because it was my second year in conceptual physics, but I think Gunn teaches at such a high level that sometimes I'm like, oh, you know, you don't just learn Newton's laws, that's just not, it's not like a multiple choice test at Gunn. It's a very high STEM school. So you got to know your stuff to be, you know, in science. So about 3 years in, I ask less questions.
But how nice for kids to see that teachers are willing to ask, right? To tap into each other's strengths. And do you think the relationship helped with the grading? Like it is, you see the data,
In terms of how they do,
how they perform?
not our grading, not what we do. Yeah, actually, I mean, I do. We've also made this shift to, we've been doing, at least since you started?
Yeah.
Okay, evidence-based grading. And so we're not looking at specific things, we're looking at overall science practices, and so we teach the content through the science practices. And so as we're assessing that, we're helping the students understand how to communicate their knowledge using the practice. And since it's a similar practice over and over again, it just gets deeper and deeper as we go. I think they see success. And I think that the fact that we work together with that lets them understand that they can access what they need to access in order to learn.
Yeah, and what's good about evidence-based grading is they ask not just how do I get my percent up. You know, they start asking the right questions. What do I need to do on this? What did I do incorrectly on this bucket?
How can I better communicate my math?
So
you
more on
know,
the process
more
rather
on the
than
process. Yeah.
Rather than
just-
the letter grade. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, wow, that's deep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been good.
I think you have to with co-teaching, you have to get started on the right foot. So when I first moved to California from Texas, and I was told I was going to be co-teaching, you know, I don't know if you reached out to me or I reached out to you, I don't remember, but you know, we met at a cafe before school even started, and there's a list of questions that our admin, Ms. Carla Magno, gave us that was like, I don't know, 20 questions, and it was making sure that how does she want to do things, how do I want to do things, and then coming together and answering those questions of what do we see our class looking like, what do we see behavior, what do we see with phones, asking questions you need to have answered before you even start co-teaching, and what's the expectations. And then sometimes I think general ed teachers, not Lori, but they forget that a SPED teacher does two jobs. So not only are we co-teaching in class, or even have maybe our own specialized academic class, we have a caseload of 20 plus students, and that takes up a lot of our time. And so if you're rigid in that you have to meet every single time, like, yes, you should meet every week, but say I have back-to-back IEPs, or I need to write and test kids for their reevaluation. Sometimes, like, you might miss a week or two within the year or within the month. And so being flexible with SPED teachers is really nice. If you're not, it can lead to anger and resentment, and so you just kind of have to be
I think for both sides, from what we've observed of other teams.
Yeah, because some people go in with the expectation that their co-teachers are going to be, on it. They're going to have equal grading and equal this, and sometimes it's not equal. You hope you try to make it equal,
yeah.
but it's just not, because you have to remember that SPED also has a second job, and so we have you have to just go in knowing that in co-teaching and not be so rigid. Yeah.
So you think that proactive planning in the summer helped you? Do you think?
For sure. It also, I mean, one of the things that I had been thinking of before we met that day, excuse me, was that I was told that TK's pronouns are they, them, and so then I'm thinking, well, how do they want to be addressed in class, right? I'm Ms. Pennington. How do they want to be addressed in class? And so that was going to be one of my questions. And one of the first things TK said to me is, so I was thinking, I think I want to be Coach Haney in class. And I'm like, okay. So we were already thinking on the same page before we even started. So that I knew was going to be good. But I do think that it's really important for teams to lay out the responsibilities and the expectations. I do think that there are some co-teachers who let go of any responsibility in terms of the planning, and that's a problem as well. So there does need to be a balance, but they definitely have more to balance, kind of like an elementary school teacher who has to teach multiple subjects. That's what they have to do, and they're doing it at the high school level, and they're interacting with parents and families and having meetings and their legal things, and so it's really important to understand that. I think the other thing that helps with us is we get a common prep, which is nice, and but sometimes that common prep ends up being shared. If TK's doing math and science, both math and science teachers have the same common prep with TK, and so then we're, who gets TK on which day. But I actually don't mind planning after school or on the weekend, and TK doesn't mind doing that either. So sometimes we'll be able to plan out of school time, and it's just more relaxed when it's easier to be flexible.
Yeah, when you're not rushed and like, well, we have to get this done in an hour and 20 minutes. So sometimes you can just meet at a coffee shop, and sometimes it helps just going outside of school and doing it. I know it's not we don't do it all the time. So we're not saying, hey, you need to plan outside of school.
No, we're not saying that. No, we're not saying
we
that.
do it sometimes.
Send the teachers outside the school, please.
Sometimes, like, hey, meet me after school. We need to set up the lab. Okay, no problem. Let's set up the lab. And sometimes, near grading periods, it's like, oh, okay, we need to go over the people's grades together, and let's grade these notebooks together. I'll grade this, and you, like, Lori's in charge of, like, all the writing assignments. And I do a lot of the other buckets and evidence-based grading, because, the writing takes the longest. You got to read through them, annotate them for the kids, and then I do all the other stuff. So it evens out, but yeah.
And it's nice during a grading period, we can both be on the computer, and one of us can look at what the grade is, and the other one of us can make sure to plug in the grade and then to add comments. And then if we want, then both of us can add comments, and it's nice to be able to do that. You have to hit save in between, but otherwise, we're all good.
And do you see, when you're having a conversation during grading time, you think about that student, said, is that what you saw? Like, to understand what the student understood, because you both saw the evidence differently, just to validate, like, I think Johnny understands this, or do you see that, like, discussion, like,
especially when we're going through an assessment?
Yeah.
Yes, because we grade assessments together, and what we do is we go through first and put feedback on the assessments, and then we determine where they are in the level of the rubric. And so sometimes we'll be looking at something, and I'll say, like, I thought this person had this, and then TK would say, well, actually, they did this other day. And so we do get different perspectives on the students. It's really nice to have that extra perspective.
that's another benefit of that.
Yeah.
So my next question is about roadblock, and I'm getting a sense that you never had a roadblock in this journey.
No.
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 roadblocks.
No. Yeah, there's
No.
roadblocks. Sure, there's
Never
roadblocks.
think so?
Tell me
Yeah,
about
see?
the roadblock.
Right there,
Oh,
roadblock.
you think so?
This is the one.
No.
What do you, in terms of roadblocks, what
Well,
do you
Like,
mean?
what
I mean,
was there
there's-
something that you had to work through? Is there something that you had?
I think there's some, you're like, oh, you
Oh,
never
should
told
we
me
talk
about
about this
any
right now?
roadblocks.
Nat?
This is
Okay.
the marriage part of the
This is
relationship.
the edited version.
Yeah.
Bleep.
No, I think that there are times when I'm doing something that doesn't match TK style, or TK does something that's not matching my style, and then sometimes we'll hang on to it because you're not going to air it in front of the children.
Right.
And so then we sometimes air it later, or we forget about it, and then you don't air it, then it happens again, and then it becomes a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have had to take personal timeouts once in a while, which,
Yeah.
you know,
Just with any relationship.
but it's not really a roadblock in the teaching. It's just a relationship thing.
Yeah.
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 But I still love them very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely been times where it's like, I need a break. And so, like, I'll step out because, you know, we've done something that the other person didn't realize they were doing. And so it was, like, frustrating. You definitely have those moments, but, you know, I forgot about them.
Right.
I was like,
See,
I
you
don't
didn't
know
even
what
remember.
roadblocks
That's
are.
why.
I
shouldn't have
internalize.
asked. Yeah. You hold on to it. Grudge number one.
There's none of that. So it's like, you know, you have your little squabble or whatever, and then you just move past it and try not to repeat. So
Yeah, it's usually my fault. So
That makes the relationship so
It's-
easy. Somebody just
it's just I have issues with flexibility sometimes, and so
No.
you know,
No.
yeah. Anyway,
what would you say to the teachers who would get on this journey, the pitfalls to avoid? Like they signed up for it, willingly signed up for it, they want to go on it, or they're asked to be on it.
yeah.
You know, either ways.
there's so many teams that we've seen that have some issues,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Without naming names,
No,
let's just,
no,
I'm
right.
just
No,
kidding.
no, right.
Like,
So
what is the
there's a
pitfalls
lot
like you
of-
thought that, oh, this could have worked, but you know, if they would have thought about this.
You know, they do a lot of some teachers really like the stage and the limelight.
Sage on the stage.
Oh, stage on the stage. It's just such an individualistic, yeah.
Yeah, and so you have one teacher that's like really wants to just do all the talking, and you know, and then you have the other, you know, the co-teacher we've seen sits on the sidelines.
Gets relegated.
Yeah, and so and then it gets it's frustrating, and then
We have some co-teachers who are actually also experts in the content that they're helping with. But they're not allowed to show their expertise with the whole class. So sometimes teams will have it where the co-teacher will always be pulling out students. And it won't always be special ed students, it'll just be the students who need the most help because they have that expertise. But at the same time, wouldn't it be nice if the gen ed did the pull out sometimes and the co-teacher were able to stay in the class?
So the pitfall to avoid would be to have a conversation about your classroom management style, like what
For
what
sure.
will happen. That
And avoiding the pitfall of the special ed teacher always having to be the interventionist when there's behavior issues. Both teachers should understand if a student has behavior issues, they should both understand how to deal with those issues, so that it can be both people, because we've had students in the past, if only one of us deals with that person all the time, then they start resenting that person, and then they'll always ask the other person when they have a question or things like that. So we try and both share the load on all of the different parts of the classroom, management and teaching.
yeah.
It's just better that way. So I think the pitfall of relegation to glorified aid is a big
Yes.
pitfall. So that's one big pitfall.
Yeah, then, you know, there's where the special ed teacher then resents and hates the class.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, what am I even doing? I'm just standing here
Yeah.
helping kids when they need help and not involved in the actual learning process.
I think another pitfall is assuming that the co-teacher is a team teacher, meaning that they're sharing half of the load of the class, whereas the co-teacher is the access specialist, right? As opposed, so they shouldn't be expected like, okay, I'm going to do half of this planning and you do half of this planning and then you teach that part and I teach this part, that doesn't really work. It doesn't play to the co-teacher's strengths all the time. And so I think that it's important to understand that the gen ed teacher may be doing more of the overall planning, and the co-teacher is going to be saying how the students can better access the plan that's there, so that when it's implemented, you have the best of both worlds.
Tika, since you talked about the behavior aspect of it, and my intuition says that the kids who are in non-co-taught class, the same kids, do you think there's more behavior there versus, like, there's a benefit of being in a co-taught class which kind of minimizes behavior, would you both say, from your own experience, like hearing about those kids in a non-co-taught, if they're a non-co-taught
Yeah,
class?
I mean, if you have, some of our rowdier classes, none of the kids were bad. They have executive functioning issues or ADHD, and so you have to play to their strengths too as a teacher. And sometimes our kids would just walk out of class during a lab, or because we're busy helping in labs, and a kid would walk out, and so we're like,
Where's so-and-so?
where's so and so? And so having to go find them and bring them back, or sometimes we wouldn't go find them; they'll be right out there, and we'll call them out. But
What about kids that are not in co-taught classes?
I don't know. I'm not.
You're never
I'm
in
never
a
in a
non-co-taught
non-co-taught class,
class.
so like
Yeah.
I can't tell you.
I think that there are behavior issues in classes that are not co-taught as well. And I think that it is
But
more
more?
difficult to deal with them. And I don't know if it's more or not, because I think that because we tend to, like TK said, our classroom is often organized chaos. We enjoy them being able to learn in the style that they can learn. When it becomes more chaos than organized, then we rein that in. But in other classes, especially in a lab science class, right, which is where I would be talking to teachers about how their classes are, if they have students that have behavior issues, you may get, instead, if you don't have a co-teacher there or someone who can help, you're going to call down to the office and have someone come get the kid. Whereas with a team like us, we can deal, one of us can step out with a student and deal with it, and then we get them back into the classroom sooner than somebody who is not in a co-taught class, who then needs to send the student, say, to the office to sit out the period because they can't deal with them. I think that
You might have one or two versus we'll have 5 or 6.
right.
So it's in that non-co-taught setting, it's going to be 1 or 2 special ed, or not even special ed, but like 1 behavior issue, where sometimes in our class we can have 5 kids who, I wouldn't say behavior necessarily, I would just say executive functioning issues. Would you say behavior?
Impulse control.
Impulse control issues. So so behavior makes it sound like they're bad, but they're not.
I mean,
They're
impulse
really not.
control is like everybody's dealing with it right now with social
Right.
media and
Right.
a cell phone. Like
Exactly.
everybody has impulse
Exactly.
control.
Yes.
When I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Laurie, what are you going to tell to a teacher who's on the fence about co-teaching?
Well, one of the benefits of co-teaching is if you need to use the restroom in the middle of the period, the co-teacher can stay there while you go. So that's one benefit. No, I think that having a co-teacher enriches the classroom, and it really helps all the students in the classroom if you are working with the co-teacher as a colleague and as an equal partner in the class, but not equal in the sense, the outside of class part, right? You're not necessarily equal in what some people would consider to be equal, which is sharing a load, but equal in the sense that they have their part to do, you have your part to do. You know that sometimes when you're teaching something, it doesn't go over well with some students, but it goes over with the majority. The co-teacher can help you figure out how to make it so that you can get all the students. And that's our goal, right? So our goal is that we want all students to learn at the level that we are teaching them. And so we shouldn't be making any adjustments. And I think that that is the part that if you actually like teaching students, that of course you're going to want to be better.
Yeah.
And I think having a co-teacher makes you better.
TK, what do you think?
Yeah.
And on the fence, what are you going to tell them?
for people who are on the fence.
Like, oh, should I do that?
Sped teacher on the fence. How about that?
How about sped teacher on the fence?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's the sped teachers at Gunn,
Or just
you
in
know, they
general?
enjoy it because we're with students. I think, you know, we got into teaching for the relationships with students and to help students with learning disabilities. You know, I had a learning disability growing up, and so I have a lot more patience for things that I might have done as a kid, or I can see, you know, different ways to help that student maybe learn the material. But I think, you know, based in our office, we love those classrooms because I think we love the kids. And so if, you know, if they're, I haven't really met many sped teachers that don't like co-teaching. I can't say for gen ed.
So if there was a gen ed teacher like on the fence, how would you sell yourself as a co-teacher?
Good question.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Put me on the spot.
And what you could bring to the classroom.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't like to, I would tell them I don't like to sit idle. I would definitely want to be part of the class and the learning process. And, you know, I have really good relationship with students, but I also have good relationships with co-teachers, you know. I can be patient, but I can also push back if I needed to. So finding that middle ground of not being too pushy or not being too laid back, you got to find that middle ground. And yeah, because I have a new co-teacher. Well, not I had last year was I had a new co-teacher, and we hit the ground running. Went through our questions, and yeah, it worked out really well. You know, we did stations, and one class we had to do stations, but it was like the most. I think it was 7 football boys. I think only 3 girls in the class. So like all the desks had to face the walls. So we had 4 stations, but all the kids faced forward and not towards, because then they would look at each other and make funny faces, you know, like freshman boys would do. So everybody had to face away from each other. But then they all, you know, there was a teacher at every station. So it was like, you can't face each other because we can't get anything done. And so they had to face away. But, you know, that was like, we tried multiple methods before we got to that one, because it's like, what do we do? This class is tough. Lori would sub for me sometimes if I was out. I'd be like, can you go help? Because this class is just, it's a lot. And the kids aren't bad. I actually love the kids, but they were a lot. And so Lori would sub for me, you know, on her prep when I was absent, so.
So you moved between the models of co-teaching. Like you tried different things out of those 6 co-teaching models, like, you know, if the parallel teaching, stations is working.
Yeah, we actually had to do another classroom. So it's like 28 students. So I would take 14. If we had to do direct instruction on like a Monday, which is a 45-minute period, I would take 14, and my other co-teacher would take 14. And we would do direct instruction in 2 small groups versus 1 large group. Because sometimes in math, you have to do the direct instruction. And sometimes you don't have to, but like most of the time you need that one day for like 30 minutes where you need to teach how to do it at different levels. And then the next 2 days is when you review and do stations, and like direct instruction is not really there. So.
Laurie, did you want to add something? No. Did you add something?
I'm not sure. So I mean, I did I subbed on 2 Mondays, and it was difficult for the gen ed teacher to not have TK there on a Monday, because I couldn't, it was a last minute job pickup kind of thing, and I wasn't prepared to take half the class and teach them, you know, about
Whatever's happening in algebra.
roots or whatever they were doing that day, you know, so in algebra. So I went around and heavily helped keep students on task and trying to check their answers and things like that. But I could see the struggle on those days of the teacher, because it was, the students were very busy and not always busy with what they were supposed to be doing. So they definitely benefit during direct instruction. They had guided notes and things like that, but they definitely benefited from the smaller group to make sure that they felt like you were talking to them as opposed to just talking in the class. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are at the last question. I call it the speedy short answer round.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Oh gosh.
I think
okay.
you're talking longer than I am today,
Yeah.
by the way.
I can't believe it.
Did I emphasize it short?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, TK, what is Lori's Starbucks order?
Oh, decaf coffee with almond milk.
Okay. Lori, what about TK?
Oh, TK likes coffee black, but yeah, and I don't know that either one of us would actually go to Starbucks.
No.
I know.
Wait, which one would you go to?
Phil's.
Lori?
Phil's.
Phil's. TK,
And
Lori?
me,
Pete's.
Pete's.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pete's and Phil's.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
was not expecting that question, by the way.
Either one of you can answer. What's trust got to do with being on a journey together?
Oh, you have to be able to trust in order to know that if you make a mistake, especially an interpersonal mistake by accident, right, that you can apologize in a sincere way and be able to move on.
Yeah. I would agree.
Okay. That wraps up my questions. Anything else you would like to share that we missed and you would love for aspiring teachers to know about co-teaching or experienced teachers to know about co-teaching? Anything you want to share?
Do it.
That-
Do it.
It's fun. I mean, if you love kids, jump in. And
It's students that have special learning needs do better when they learn in the general education setting, period. They learn faster than they would if they were in a specialized academic instruction setting. Having co-taught classes that students can be in makes it so that all students can access what
Yeah.
every student should be able to access. And sometimes students with special needs, they're not less intelligent.
Nope.
Their intelligence is in different places. And it's so exciting to learn about where those intelligences are and be able to help them find their strengths so that they no longer feel stupid, but that to show them that they do have strengths, and if they learn in those areas of strength, they're going to learn farther than other people too, so that they're actually special, not less than special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely, they're not less than.
Mm-mm.
They're not, they're very smart kids that have some learning needs. But then once they figure out, how to deal with their, challenges, then it's really cool to see, because then they feel more confident in your class. And I think that's a testament to us, is the kids who would normally skip class in other classes never
that's a-
skip ours.
Yeah, say the
And so
escaping.
they're like, what do you do? I was like,
Sometimes we kind of hope that they wouldn't be there, but
One of those days.
people
Not
ask
really,
us,
not
what do
really.
you do? I was like, we don't do anything different. We just teach. I don't know why they come to our class. I'm glad they feel safe enough to come to our class, but I don't know what we do that makes them come to our class and skip every other class. We don't. I have no idea.
I'm sure there's the sense of belonging they have, right?
Yeah.
They feel they're valued. They feel their form of intelligence, which we cannot see. We only see neurotypical way of intelligence, but there are some other intelligence. I'm sure they feel valued. It's very inspiring to hear that, and for you both to say that
Yeah.
they do much better in a co-taught class.
They definitely do. Every student does.
every student, right? I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you both. As we wrap up this episode of Inclusion Journey podcast, I want to express my gratitude towards Lori and TK, who took time out during the summer break to come and have this conversation about co-teaching. Thank you for joining an Inclusion Journey podcast, where we have candid conversation about compelling concepts in education. Join us each month as we share ideas, inspiration, and insights. We are now on YouTube and Spotify. Follow us, on seccoe.to/Spotify Inclusion Journey. Thank you for joining. See you next month.